is Nairi and I'm running an adoption family support type channel, and today I'm going to talk to you about what happened to us, to my husband and I, when we were fostering our boys, and actually we were asked to give them away for adoption. And so we were obviously heartbroken. I'll tell you what happened, how this transpired, and actually we have them back now. They're 10 and 11 and we've adopted them, so it's all good in the end. But this is what happened to us when we had to hand them over. If you think a family support type channel could be useful to you, could be interesting, tips and advice on children's behaviour, etc., parenting, then please take the time to subscribe by hitting the button down below. So what happened with us is we were fostering the boys for a couple of years. There are other videos about our adoption story, but I'm going to concentrate now on what happened on an adoption day, when we went to an adoption day. So we were asked to get the boys ready for adoption, and we had difficulties. They had difficulties finding potential adopters for them, so we asked to go to an adoption day. Now, I'm not sure if that's the same across the world, but in the UK, adoption days are where families go to meet potential children that they might want to adopt, and so that was the same for us. So we went as foster carers and took the boys along with us, you know, dressed them up smartly, and we told ourselves really strongly that we needed to accept that it was time for the boys to move on, and that we were the foster carers, we weren't the adopters, and we needed to support the process for them to find a new home. And at the time we weren't being considered for the boys because we were just foster carers ready to pass them on. So we took them to this adoption day. We told ourselves we were going to be positive and that we were really going to try our best to communicate with as many potential adopters as possible and tell them all the positives about the boys, which that is what we did. So we went along, and I have to say it was really well organised. There were loads and loads of activities for the children to do. It wasn't as bad as what I thought it was going to be, apart from the fact that my heart was broken that we were having to pass them on anyway. And also I was anxious both ways. I was either anxious that nobody was going to come forward for my beautiful boys, or the boys that weren't mine but I felt were beautiful boys, or that somebody would come along that I thought wasn't necessarily right for the boys, or I didn't know, but I was anxious. I'm sure my husband was anxious as well. So boys back then, as can be now really, in public are very withdrawn. They're not particularly easy to talk to, and back then they were only 4 and 5, I believe, and so they were very withdrawn anyway, very shy, very fearful, and they can go like that now, even now they're older, but back then more so. So even the activities that were there for them to do, they probably held back from quite a bit. So it needed us to go and approach potential adopters, and as a sibling group of boys as well, it was never going to be easy to find potential adopters for the boys, especially with their history. So I can remember that we just looked around us and thought, okay, are there adopters standing around with nobody to talk to? And thought, well, the first thing we can do is make them feel welcome. So even if they're not interested in our boys, we'll try and find people to talk to rather than home in on the boys. So we did. We went to a first couple that we chatted to, and then they showed an interest in the boys, who are trying to be balanced about it. You know, we met this couple, we said to them, you know, all about their positives, but also the problems that we'd had with them. And so there was this couple interested, and then we happened to talk to another couple who we found out were more local to us, and they were probably a little bit more reticent, but asked more, shall we say, relevant questions about the boys, and we talked to them as well. So we came away from the adoption day feeling heartbroken again, because we really felt that one of those couples, or both of those couples, were probably going to move forward with the boys. And as we came away from that adoption day, actually both of them did come forward for the boys, but the more local couple were chosen because of their wide range of experiences. And so there started the journey of letting go with the boys that we'd come to love so dearly. We'd had them for over 2 years at that point, and we'd had to go through a lot to kind of try to get them in a good place, where they were, you know, making progress with us. And so then the journey began of, you know, letting go of them and preparing them for a new home. Now, where it may be different from us was that we had had the boys for a very long time, and they were very challenging, and it had been quite a while before we were then presented with the option of them being adopted. So we were having to get them to let go of us in a way that maybe some foster carers wouldn't need to do. We were having to try to get them to understand that we weren't their family, and because they'd had really poor speech from the beginning, this was a real challenge because they just did not understand why we couldn't be their real family. And so there were lots and lots of nights of heartbreaking crying and saying they didn't want to leave us, and just, well, that was just a horrendous time really. And the thing is about this whole situation is, if the boys hadn't been as attached to us as they were, then I think they may have made the transition a lot more easily. And if they'd been more resilient than they were, then a lot of the issues that then transpired from the adoption when they went wouldn't have happened. I feel like the relationship that we had with the potential adopters for the boys was excellent. It couldn't have been any better. And I think the way they dealt with the boys was brilliant as well. Throughout the introductions and the whole thing went really, really well. But the bottom line is that we'd said to the social workers that were dealing with the boys and the people in charge of the case that we really didn't think the boys were going to be resilient enough to move on to new adopters. The bottom line is that, you know, I know some people don't like me saying this on camera, but some adoptions just do not work out, and sometimes it's hard to know why. I mean, you couldn't really anticipate that this adoption was not going to work out for the boys and that they were going to come back to us, except our underlying feeling that they weren't resilient enough to take another change. But at the end of the day, no one really could have predicted how much of a dramatic breakdown that the adoption was and how quickly it was going to break down. And nobody would have questioned the commitment of the adopters, and I still don't question the commitment of those adopters. I just think that when it came down to it, the behaviours were so challenging for them and so made their family dynamic so difficult to deal with that they just couldn't do it. Yes, that was very damaging for the boys, and it made more attachment issues for them, for sure. It was very damaging, but at the end of the day, it was still the right decision that the boys came back to us, because we were the ones that had built that strong attachment with them, and we were the ones who were going to be able to offer them what they needed in the family. So it's bittersweet, you know. Nobody wants to admit that adoptions don't work out, but unfortunately sometimes they don't. So I hope you find that interesting, and I hope that if you go to an adoption day that you will then see everything from lots of perspectives and go in with it positively and with an open mind as a potential adopter, or maybe you're a foster carer and you might have to do that with one of the children that you have. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you on my channel somewhere.